Good morning. This is Selwyn Peters, and I just want to do a quick live. Um, and it's more of an analysis of what happened this weekend. This weekend could be classified as the Mohammed's weekend in terms of everything that occurred. Had we had them returning from Barbados, uh, Azruddin and Shell returning from Barbados after a holiday, a working holiday, a vacation, whatever you call it. They were Barbados. And of course, Vice President at his press conference on Thursday had some comments to make about that trip. And as a result of his comments, we had Babsy at large from Babsy at large is from Jamaica, I believe it is, or Trinidad, but I think she's from Jamaica. We had all the people on TikTok commenting on what Vice President Jaglio said. And that was one aspect. And then on Saturday, we had a watch attempt to seize the vehicles, 4 vehicles from the Mohammeds over what is alleged to be unpaid taxes. Later on Saturday, we had drone over the Mohammed's properties, and mother of Shell Mohammed complaining about her children unable to peaceably play outside or in their yard because this drone was over and over, and they had some privacy concerns. On Sunday, we had another episode of the drones, and the person who allegedly was operating the drones being intercepted by the police. So let me show 2 videos, and then we'll talk about them afterwards. It's one thing I said, and then I'll revert back to something I had said earlier earlier this week. This was the scene outside of Mohammed's home on Saturday when the GRA came.
The GRA agents, they have no other choice but to retreat here today. There's support here for the businessman. I have a long thing to put in the public domain who instructed the release of these vehicles. It came from higher, and the vehicles are right in his country. I have all the proof, and I will expose it to the public and see how wicked and vindictive these people.
Okay, so that was the video of the GRA agents at the Mohammed residence. Right, that was the first video from in the morning where the GRA agents were met with quite a public show of resistance. And later in the day, the GRA agents went back. At that time, they went back with police support. So there was a superintendent, there was a deputy superintendent, supported by other ranks, with the same result. And at some point later on, you saw that it's made by Mr. Justice Gino Posadan. That order was that there was an interim injunction, but what Mr. Mohammed was saying is that they had a court process filed, and GRA and its officials moved in during the court process to try to thwart what the intent of that court process. So
We are back with you live for the scene.
You'll see that second
at the home of
instance.
a businessman.
So this is round 2.
Azruddin Mohammed. What we are seeing now is that
a deputy superintendent and what people, let's move forward a bit. But they showed up.
His gates
when they showed up,
are locked.
The gates were locked, and somebody made a comment that these gates are larger than the gates at Buckingham Palace. They mightn't be larger, but it seems like the same dimension. But my internet trying to load the video up, but
Bishop. As it is now,
officers
it
there.
is clear that the businessman has garnered a lot of support.
Send custom agents. Stand side police.
In this developing situation here.
See if they move forward. The gate is. We've got.
And as such, it would be unlawful to remove the vehicles from his home. The agents of the Guyana Revenue Authority Customs Enforcement Unit retreated. Will be the move by the Guyana Revenue Authority. Came to seize 4
Stop sharing this. We'll show you some images from Travis Chase page. Show you some images.
Yeah.
Show you some images from Travis Chase page. Officers, inspector, and a deputy superintendent interacting with Azruddin Mohamed. All right, so I'm not going to speak on the legal aspect that occupies the court right now. So I'm not going to speak on the interim injunction, the injunction that was granted, or any of that. But what I'm going to speak about is the operational process. So you have the Guyana Revenue Authority and you have the Guyana Police Force. There's an operation that was obviously planned. It couldn't be a whimsical or as per the moment move to seize those vehicles or to take possession of those vehicles. This had to be something that they would consider, and there would be meetings and the sort to deal with this situation. You would think that for an operation of that sort, where you have to control for the sort of crowd that assembled at the Mohamed's home, right? There would have been an operational plan, and there would have been contingencies in the event that the Mohammeds were non-compliant, or in the event that there were persons there who intended to obstruct the operation, or who have assaultive, threatening behavior that pose a risk to the life and safety of the police officers and the custom agents involved in the operation. You would have also thought that there would be a need to know regime in terms of this operation, where there's strict confidence. The details of the operation is held in strict confidence. And the operation would have been launched at the break of dawn, where it would have caught the Mohammeds unaware. You have an operation, and in terms of the operation, there definitely was a leak. Somebody leaked to the Mohammeds, or the Mohammeds got some intelligence that this was going to happen. And Mr. Mohammed in effect said that somebody called him and told him that something was happening, and he was able to get people to show up. You can see that the custom officers had body-worn cameras. The police officers had body-worn cameras. Of course, it's 2025, so there was lots of video recordings from cell phones, and even the media was there. Travis Chase and other people, other news media were there recording. You can see on the video, the custom officers were quite close to the crowd, and the crowd essentially, by their force of power, managed to push the officers back to create some distance between the officers and Mr. Mohammed, Azruddin Mohammed. You can see that a lot of the people, particularly the females, were in an overwrought state. Those videos, right, tell a story that should never happen. That should never occur in respect to these situations. Number one is there should have been, like I said, an operational plan. There should have been the area should have been cordoned off. The area should have been cordoned off. There should have been at least, in the first instance, which we didn't see, there should have been a senior police officer there. There should have been the tactical services unit there, or in the alternative, the Special Weapons and Tactics Team, because Guyana has a SWAT unit, and that SWAT unit has various teams, so they should have had one or more teams from the SWAT unit present. And that place should have been cordoned off so that only people that needed to be within that locus would have been in the locus. And that is not what happened there. You had all kind of people there. And because you had all kind of people there, it created some chaos that should never occur. And the truth of the matter is that regardless of whether or not the raid that was going on or the attempted seizure of the vehicles was legal or not, you can't have, you're saying you're accusing the government on the one hand of weaponizing the police, and then on the other hand, you have the citizens who were weaponized by the Mohammeds. Against the state, because certainly those people that were there weren't there at their own behest. I mean, if the Mohammeds didn't want those people to be on their property, as you saw, they locked the gates against the police, locked the gate with those people inside. They could have asked the people to leave and deal with it directly with the police. I mean, what we saw there was a breakdown. In terms of training, dealing with incident command. Like a case like that, where you have a superintendent, you have a deputy superintendent, you have an inspector, you have constables, and you have sergeants. Plus you have another law enforcement agency. You know, you have to take into account leadership, decision-making, planning, information processing. Right? That is important. And, you know, in that case, you know, incident command, it's specialized. It's a specialized form of leadership appropriate for high stress and high pressured environment where critical decision making is conducted with limited time and information constraints. And, you know, anyone anyone within law enforcement can take up the mentorship of the incident command. You know, and in this case, you know, it was a high risk event. Going to the Mohammed's place because you don't know who had weapons, whether it's firearms or knives or cutlasses or any form of weapons. There was a public order component, and that public order component was on unplanned event because you saw all those people that showed up. That creates a public order situation. And when you have a superintendent there, you know, you'd expect that the superintendent is taking the command of the situation. And, you know, there's always an assessment of the scene, situational awareness. You have to, you know, you'd think that there would have been information and intelligence. In this case, all we saw that the police, and GRA really were not ready for what happened there. And essentially, even with Mr. Azruddin Mohamed handing his phone to the police, no, to the GRA agent to speak to his lawyer should not have occurred. I mean, if the lawyer wanted to have a conversation, the lawyer should have had a conversation with GRA's lawyer or Mr. Station, either, but not with the person on the ground. I mean, in these cases, there has to be leadership, there has to be situational awareness, there has to be coordination and planning, there has to be some decision making, there has to be communications, there has to be role assignments and task and care for self and others. And all that was missing. All that was missing in terms of what you saw on the scene. And this is what the Criminal Law Offenses Act, Chapter 801, says, particularly Section 308. It deals with the duty of law enforcement officers if people are behaving in a riotous fashion. Section 308, subsection 3 provides that officers will be free, discharged, and indemnified of, from, and against all proceedings, whether criminal or civil criminal liability, in the event of injury and or death caused to any persons engaged in a riot. That wasn't necessarily a riot, but it was riotous behavior. And it says, if any person so unlawfully riotously and tumultuously assembled together as aforesaid, or 12 or more of them continue together and do not disperse themselves from the space of 15 minutes after a proclamation is made or after the hindrance as aforesaid, it shall be the duty of every justice or mayor aforesaid and of all persons required by him to assist to cause those persons to be apprehended and taken before a magistrate to be dealt with according to the law. And if any person of those so assembled is killed, maimed, or dispersed in their apprehension or dispersal or in the endeavor or apprehended or dispersed them, every person ordering them to be apprehended or dispersed, and every person executing those orders shall be free, discharged, indemnified of, from, or against proceedings, whether civil or criminal, in respect thereof. So whether under the Customs Act, the Police Act, the Criminal Law Offenses Act, or the Public Order Act, law enforcement can use force to remove people that shouldn't be within a certain space and are obstructing their operation. And of course, the rules of engagement comes into play. Standard operation procedures come into place. And you can deal with ringleaders and all that sort of stuff. You also have to deal with worst case scenarios. What I'm saying about the situation at the Mohamed's home is if Azruddin Mohamed or Shell Mohammed allow those people to come to their home, allow them onto the property with the aim of obstructing law enforcement, and those people are riotous and they cause a disturbance and they engage law enforcement in ways that are inappropriate. They are in some way responsible for the consequences of what occur. I mean, the police and the custom officers have to really review their incident command structure. They have to really engage in incident command training, because this certainly is going to ultimately lead to better decision making, better recording of decision making, better articulation on the ground and in court, because a few things and better outcomes. But let's look at articulation. The custom officer that seemed to be in charge of the operation, he was asked by the media whether he works for the Guyana Revenue Authority. And he said no comment. Certain questions that he was asked that he could have affirmatively say yes. Because obviously, if you're at the Mohammed's house, you're executing a process, you're supposed to carry the posture of an authority figure. The station is not on the ground. You're on the ground. You're the ultimate authority. do you work for the custom authority, the revenue authority? Yes. Are you executing a process on behalf of the revenue authority? Yes. Another thing that he said is he wasn't aware that there was a court process that was happening. So that was kind of bad. When the police showed up and they saw all that crowd, and the crowd was not friendly, the crowd was not nice. The tactical services unit should have been deployed. A perimeter should have been established. And certain decisions should have been taken within an incident command process. None of that occurred, and that was bad decision making. That should never ever occur if the Guyana Revenue Authority or any other authority are conducting an operation. You have to have an operational plan. You have to have contingency planning. You have to have an incident command structure. You have to control for people being non-compliant. You have to control for people having weapons. You have to control for people being assaultive. You have to be ready for threatening behavior that pose a risk to the lives and safety of the officers on the scene. None of that seemed apparent. The only thing that was apparent, was disengagement, and certainly the police not escalating the situation. That's the only thing that was apparent, but nothing else was apparent. You actually had the senior Mohamed. The senior Mohamed effectively took control as well. The senior Mohamed took control of the scene at some point, because so you'll see how the Mohammeds took control in the final analysis.
That's not what it's for. They only make it a I know that this would not be the instructions of this station because I'm very familiar with all this. Don't make it look like it was such a trivial thing. I don't want to go into the reasons for you guys being here. Some of those vehicles were passed through all the system. This man and teeth to be glad to want. We went through all the requisites. You were the ones who supposed to take us to court. GRA is supposed to take it. The lawyer wrote you all and gave all the reasons. You did not even respond to those reasons.
Right now, I'm very scared for my security, my family, myself, my supporters are very scared with what is going on from them. Understand? They disarm us, you know, they leave us stranded right now in terms of security.
Allah is
You understand?
Allah is the protector. I don't work with guns and so on, you know. Yes. I told them that you can take my personal guns. And these same personal guns defending them in 1992 because I have guns since Abu time.
I get gunsons under Mr. Hoytek. And these personal,
I didn't comment on the legal aspect of what is happening in the courts with Justice Gino Prasad and the hearing the merits of the application by the Mohammed or any of that. I simply wanted to comment on what I saw from the various videos and how our law enforcement services have to do better. Because quite frankly, the truth of the matter is, I was a lawyer for the joint services at some point, prisons, fire, all those joint services, and I've been involved in the legal aspect of operations in Guyana. So I understand what an operational plan is like. I understand how to plan for contingencies. I understand how to deal with the situation that I saw outside the Mohammed's residence and inside of the residence. We've had to deal with that before. We've had to deal with that before. So for me, that is not something that is unexpected if you're having an operation, but if you have a proper operational plan and all of that, effectively and efficiently deal with what I saw occur there. And you can get your mission accomplished. I mean, the unfortunate thing about that is essentially what happened there is it looked like the Mohammeds had total control, and the law enforcement agencies had no control. And the truth is, you can't have that. You can't have that if you decide to launch an operation, because they could be costly. And that's just like if you're going into elections, and you have to deal with mass gatherings and mass protests and mass demonstrations. You know, the democratic principles arise in any country, but you still have to maintain law and order. You still have to protect lives and properties. You still have to ensure that there's no disturbances or riots or any of the sort. And so hopefully there are lots of learnings that arose from this situation.